Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 895. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camera. You know I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's what I need you to do. You know what we do mid-season. It's very similar to what we do on a race review. You know? That's kind of what we do.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it.
That's what we do. We're going to talk about the teams as they fare mid-season. What do we think of their season so far? Before doing that, though, obviously I do have to bring in instincts.
Ripped from out of the way,
You know him.
He's bad.
You
He's
love
beautiful.
him.
He's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
I happen to know that Paul is nestled in a hotel room at Mosport.
Yes. Well, no, you can't nestle
Because you're
close to
getting
Mosport
ready
because there's nothing close to it, but yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where'd you have to get a room in Montreal?
Yeah, no, it's 30 minutes away. Everyone has to do that. It's Mosport's right in the countryside. It's a beautiful place, but yeah, no hotels.
Yeah, it is
Maybe thank goodness, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's exciting. You're up there for the IMSA race.
Yes, we are. Yep, we just had our first practice. Everything's going
How'd
okay.
it go?
Yeah, pretty good.
Mario looks good.
Mario's good.
You don't
yep,
have Alex
Ross good.
Riberas this weekend, right?
No, they're racing in Brazil. The WEC team did their 2 WEC practices today, and they were looking very good also. Young Ian James, king of the bronzes, as we call him nowadays. But he put in a hot lap. He said that Brazil is pretty awesome track. So they're enjoying their time down there. And another awesome track at Mosport, one with nearly as much I guess history as Interlagos, right? I mean, Formula One used to race here, and it's the Canadian fans are very good motorsports fans, so they're already out there camping all around the track, even on a practice day or a Friday. Yeah.
Hey, it comes in handy. It's so good that Ian speaks fluent Portuguese.
Yes. It's uncanny. You think you're standing right
that
next
guy.
to Senna. Yeah.
He's like that Indiana Jones movie. He just blends in. He disappears. You'd never see him in a
You'd never know
Brazilian
he's an
crowd.
Englishman at all, really. Yeah.
Never know. You wouldn't know he was an English gent. No. He just blends in.
He
like
does.
The scenery.
Yep.
That's exciting, Paul. It's awful exciting. Well, I appreciate you coming on and doing this podcast early because, as you know, Paul is up in Canada trying to single-handedly defeat Mosport and take the victory up there this weekend. Grace is out of town this weekend, and I will be in Belgium this entire week. I'm going to be in Belgium for my anniversary.
Oof. Well, I'm sure you're taking your darling wife with you, right?
No, she wanted to, but I know. It's our 25th anniversary, Paul.
Oh, that's a big
25.
one. Holy smokes. That is a nice one. Yeah.
I know.
You got a lot of making up to do when you get back.
I know.
Might be more than a couple of bottles of Chimay going to smooth that baby out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I may have to find some Belgian chocolate and bring that home.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
You are.
But the day job calls. I got to go. So we thought what we would do is we would record an early podcast this week doing a mid-season review. So we're going to go through each team. We're going to talk about what we think about their season so far. We're going to talk about the team and each driver for each team. We'll start at the back and go forward, and then we'll share that and wrap that up. But I'm very keen to know what you guys think so far as a mid-season report, what grade you would give each team.
Now, are we mid-season as in month, or are we mid-season as in races?
I think we just passed the halfway mark.
Did we? Okay. On the longest season
there's
of Formula One history, as they keep telling us.
Ever. Yes. It's the longest season ever, which leads Lando to say,
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. That's how I feel. But anyway, we're going to rate the performance mid-season by race count, not time. Yep. So, and a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters as always. If you'd like to support the podcast, you could do that by going to our website, bottom left. You'll see support us. You can click on that, support us, and become a Patreon member. We would be incredibly grateful. All right.
Right.
Let's jump into this. Let's do a little formation lap here. So, since I'm in Belgian, Grace is out, Paul is saving the world, we thought it might be good to do this now. It'll be posted a little early. That's good. A little weekend listening, maybe. You could wait until Monday if you wanted to. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Also,
maybe do it in little
Paul,
pieces where it's like you just hold off for a day before you hear what we think about Williams. Just the suspense. Right. Make it a suspenseful week.
I mean, you could make it last for 10 days. Just listen to one team a day.
Yeah,
right?
good.
And get our thoughts on it. It's up to you. Consume as you wish.
Exactly.
Now, there is a little technical. We got a little housekeeping here. Okay. There is a technical issue with the ratings. When I start explaining that Valtteri Bottas is currently 21st in the driver rankings, the keen among you will say, well, Todd, you idiot, there's only 20 drivers. There's 10 teams, 20 drivers. Yes, I know. But you have to account for Ollie Behrman, who has more points
than half the field, probably.
Half the field. Yeah, he does. He's a P14 in the Drivers' Championship. God. Go, Ollie.
Hey.
You are the man.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Efficiency. Yeah, so there are technically 21 positions, and right now, Ollie owns P14. So we'll see if he finishes there. Mm-hmm. Who knows? So anyway, if I say that coming up here with kick Sauber in the shin, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right, Let's start at the back of the grid. We're going to start. We briefly touched on this last week, Paul, about our dismay, our confusion.
Yes.
About Sauber.
Sadness.
They currently have 0 points. They're P10 in the championship. And I'm going to share my thoughts, and we're going to get Paul's more important thoughts. My thoughts are this. This is a team that must be feeling the pressure and sense of desperation having no points. Or are they, in fact, a team that has minimal pressure, knowing that they are just in a holding pattern until 2026, meaning 2025 will be kind of the ramp up for the car design for Audi development, engine, chassis, those kind of things. So really meaning that they're kind of in a holding pattern until they get into 2025 when they really start to burn the midnight oil trying to design Audi a car, because I can't think of any other reason for the lack of performance gains from their updates or ability to score any points, even with the attrition that we've had this year in certain races, to even nip into the points, and they haven't been able to do that. There's been certain tracks, I think, that seem to favor them with middling performance, and they still haven't scored at those. Ultimately, I think I have to think, and Paul, you would know this, you're the sporting manager of a racing team. I would have to think that the morale of the team would be very difficult to keep going. They need some success here, or just some sort of change, or change all the focus to the 2025 campaign so they can kind of put it behind them. I think I get it that the main goal is 2026, but it's got to be tough to go in there and grind and go on this 24 race season and do all that you're doing. I guess if there's an upside, I just saw today that they poached Stefan Stranz. I can't say it in a German. We will ask the questions. Yeah. I can't say it in German, but anyway, obviously, they poached him. So he's going over to Sauber. So good on him. Yep. He'll be with Andreas Seidel. So I don't know, Paul, do you think they're feeling immense pressure because their development, their upgrades aren't working, they're not scoring points, or do you think this is a team in a holding pattern?
I think it's a team in a holding pattern. I think it's tough. No one, it's like the Bobs have come in and started interviewing, and no one quite knows who's actually going to get, kicked out. Who can we wear in the Hawaiian shirt on Friday and who's not, it's tough, right? It's a team right now without a defined goal, because it's not the team that they're going to be in 1-2 years time. A team is made of people. Yes, there's aerodynamics, supercomputers, there's this and that, it's carbon fiber. But in essence, it's all still the people that make the stuff happen. And when the people don't quite know where they're going to go, everyone's looking out the door because they're like, well, I may or may not be the person part of this next wave of the team. So, what should I be doing? What should I be focusing on? Trying to find a job? Should I focus on not knuckling down? Sometimes, as you know, in any business, it doesn't matter how hard you're working at this moment. If the Bobs come in 3 weeks' time, they haven't seen any of that anyway, right? So I think there's a lot of that. It's a shame because, Sauber used to have a lot of character. They had a lot of support. Certainly, Peter Sauber was a motorsports, enthusiast and did some amazing stuff, from Group C cars to starting the Formula One team. Made a big step to actually enter Formula One when he did. Yeah. And they kind of don't have anything going for them now. They're not Audi. They're not Sauber, really. They're this treading water kind of team. And that's kind of where the results are ending them up, right? And you got to also think of the salary cap. Well, not the salary cap, but the cost cap, where why would Audi be spending time developing things in a pattern that may not be guided by the people that are sitting there right now? They're probably better to spend as little money as possible, spend as much money as they can on the stuff for the future, because they're always going to have to stay under that cap. So, and as long as it's a team that can, doesn't disappear because it doesn't have results, then it's really, we're going to see really what the Audi influence is in 2 years' time. And they obviously want to kick off, pardon the pun, in a big way. And the only way to do that is by starting on that vehicle and starting all the little intricacies that they want or pathway they want to go right now, which isn't going to show up on the car that is out there driving.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're in transition. I think you're absolutely right. I think keeping morale up, it's got to be tough for that team, for employees that don't know if they're going to be there or if they're going to bring a bunch of guys from Audi in, or it is, I guess, to be fair and polite, it is a team in transition. And I think that makes it pretty difficult. Let's talk about the drivers, Paul. You got Valtteri Bottas. He's down in P21, dead last, 0 points. Valtteri is said to be looking at IndyCar options, and if that rumor is true, I think this could be his last season in F1. I think he'd actually be good in IndyCar.
Sure.
That wouldn't surprise me, as he seems to in my mind, have checked out a bit with his whole cycling and Wes Anderson fueled lifestyle he's got going on there.
Right. Amusing, but not necessarily Formula One material. Yeah.
It is amusing, but it's, the butt pictures are, fun and all, but it's a shame, because I would have thought that Valtteri would be a big asset for car development, but with so much talent in the field, I'm not sure where he would go. So maybe wringing the neck of their current car and trying to over-deliver and score points might help him stay there. I don't know. We know at least one of the drivers is gone. But from Valtteri's standpoint, and really this goes for Joe too, we're talking about a team in transition. Clearly the drivers know that too. Not just the mechanics and engineers and employees, the men and women at the team, but clearly the drivers know it too. So how motivating is that to know that Audi came in and said, you got 140 million and that's the budget cap, that's it, good luck. So, he's snared up in this team of transition. And I would assume he felt like when he went to this team that he would be an instrumental part of really working with Audi and, helping, but I just don't see that happening at this point. But so far this year, hasn't set the world on fire.
Yeah, it's weird that, the demeanor he's got. I mean, can you judge him by all these extracurricular activities and antics? To a degree, right? There's always,
his head's
always
somewhere
be
else.
humor, but then, and he's a very talented driver. We saw him. He went up against Hamilton, and occasionally he could out-qualify him. He won Grand Prix when he was given the chance, all these kind of stuff. But, there is a throng of younger drivers, and everyone's looking at the next big thing. So I think his opportunities get smaller and smaller, and that's tough to do if you've been a a guy winning races at Mercedes. It's hard to see that you're not really the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year, and you can try and stay around for a couple of years, but you're not going to ever get back to where you were. So, he probably is better off moving elsewhere, going to, a different venue where maybe he can flourish for a lot longer and have a chance to win races, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And he is a good driver. I mean, he would do well in IndyCar, do well in sports car. He really would.
Yeah.
And that's where really his probably longevity can remain. So maybe that's where his focus should be. He can occasionally this season put in some good portions of races, but never hasn't really put together a great full race. But that's the combination of driver and team and where they're all at, right?
If he was smart, he'd be hitting you up to drive one of the Valkyries next year.
Yeah, he was smart. Yeah, we're getting emails.
Yeah, if he was smart. I bet you are. Let's see. Joe Guanyu, P19, 0 points. Joe has, this is as sad as Valtteri's story is. I think Joe's is equally. I think he's done a really good job in F1 on balance in aggregate over his time in Formula One. This year hasn't been that great for him. Yeah. And you could easily blame the car for that, just as with Valtteri's performance. They're both dead last, no points. So I'm reticent to take the stuffing out of Joe. I think he's been doing a really good job in Formula One. Maybe it's not all his fault. I'm not sure where Joe would go at this point with Nico coming in. I can't imagine that he'll stay.
Yeah.
Unless he has significant Chinese backing, maybe. But even then, I don't know if Audi's really that interested in it. I don't know. Where he would go, I don't know. But it's difficult for me to rate either Valtteri or Joe in this mid-season because they just haven't had the car. It's nowhere, and the team has no points. And it's
not looking
hard
like scoring
to
any
polish
points.
a turd and drive it. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just at the end of the day,
Not good enough, damn it!
it's just not good enough.
Yeah. I mean, Joe. I mean, I didn't think he was going to achieve much in Formula One when he came in. I thought, well, he's just another guy with some money and backing, and maybe it's because of where he's from. But he actually did a really good job in his rookie season. And is this his third season now?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, I thought he showed better than I expected. This year,
me too.
As I said, it is tough for him, and there's a growing or a shrinking opportunities for guys like him. Honestly, there's more. Everyone's jumping on the F1 band. More manufacturers jumping in. We got Audi. We're hearing Toyota are coming in. Well, all this
Honda,
stuff is going to bring their factory drivers and limit. Literally, let's call him an independent driver. I'm sure he comes with funding, but an opportunity for a ride anywhere. And unless he came in and literally, destroyed Valtteri and started doing amazing things, he's going to kind of end up being a guy that was a decent F1 driver a few years ago, which is sad for him, I'm sure. We saw his emotion at his home Grand Prix. He's definitely passionate about the sport and what he's done and what he's achieved. So it is a shame to see that for sure. But that's what it is. Yeah.
It is, unfortunately. Let's talk about Williams. You've got Williams Mercedes. They've got 4 points in the championship. They're P9 in the championship. I think, Paul, you said it absolutely best when you said that last year James could fix the low-hanging issues with immediate impact. But this year, you even said this in our preseason, you said this year going to be a lot harder. And he's facing major issues. And the results are not going to be easily achievable or easily seen. And I think you were spot on. Last year, it was easy to find all the low-hanging fruit and say, fix, and then instantly see some gains. And we were all alight last year about the impact James Vowles seemingly had. And you cautioned us in our preseason. You said, hey, just be careful because that's the easy stuff to fix. Now he's facing hard stuff. And to point that out, I would say that they're locked into a car design with limited budget, and I don't hold that against James or anyone at that team. But things like showing up to races with not enough spare parts to field 2 cars because one chassis is damaged, that's not good, right?
No.
The team, I will say this, in the middle of this season, I do believe the team know their limitations. They know where they're strong, they know where they're weak, and they know what they got to work on. I'm not convinced this chassis is going to allow them to solve for some of their more major issues they're having, but I think they've come to accept their deficiencies this year, and they're making the most out of the tracks that they feel they can compete at. So I have a lot of respect for that. And I have a lot of respect for the team. They're working really hard to make sure they maximize their opportunities at those tracks where they feel like they have a remote opportunity to score points, and they're being in the championship. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised they have scored that fewer points, because I think they've shown a good rate of speed at those tracks that they kind of focused on. They just didn't get that result that ultimately they were hoping for. But it does surprise me that it's that fewer points, and I think Alex Albon does a great job. And the one thing that I think Sauber kick whatever lost was its soul and its character. And for a while there, Williams didn't have any. We were like, who are these people that just bought it? Who, there was no face to it. There was no direction to it. And I think as much as James Vowles, maybe didn't get it quite right and didn't see, some of the obstacles that could happen running into season 2, he does bring character. So does Albon. And I enjoy what they're doing, and I enjoy supporting where they're going. And I think they'll get there. So I think it's all positive. But on you look at the spreadsheet, not showing so much, but they're in a difficult position as opposed to maybe what Sauber are doing, where they can pretty much sign off on 2 seasons in order to get the bigger game when the big Audi name comes on the side of the car. They've kind of got to slowly grab their performance, and they can't afford to take a season off to pull up their money and resources, which is kind of what James Vowles was asking for, right? He wanted a little bit of leniency so that they could bring their facility up to Formula One standard and current Formula One standard. That he was denied that, so they've got to rethink it a little bit and maybe put them 2 steps back. But I think they're going in the right direction. It's just a little back and forth as they learn and find their way through.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I appreciate James tried to right-size the expectations there. At least in his mind, he's got to go home and think, hey, look, I told Dortmund what we needed to be successful, so it's on them. If they're not going to invest, we won't. It's on them. He'll find another job. But let's talk about the drivers. Alex Albon, Alex Albon, P17, he's on 4 points. Alex, he scored all the points. Alex is doing a great job. To your point, Paul, it seems to me, and I could be totally wrong, this is just a gut feeling, but it seems to me this year's car is more difficult than last year. He seems to be struggling more this year than he did last year. And I still think he's doing an awesome job, but just on surface, it just felt like he was doing a better job last year. And I'm not laying that at Alex's feet. I'm laying it at the car's feet, because he's doing all he can in this car. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Yeah. So I think for Alex's standpoint, the one thing that, to me, that I'm still pleased to see, and just even more confirmed out of Alex this season, is his immense and terrific feedback to the team on that car. His ability, who would place Alex Albon as one of the better drivers to help develop a car in Formula One grid? I think he's doing an incredible job. If you listen to interviews, he'll go on for 20 minutes about what the car is doing, what needs to be, he gets it. And I think he's a huge asset to that team. That's why they re-signed him, which was a stroke of genius on James' part.
Yeah.
So I think Alex is all that.
Yeah, I think he also, yeah, I mean, he's learned it on the job too. It's, it's not like he's had a sensei speaking, I think he's done the hard work, on the off season, on the off days to learn more and more and more about how to be a better driver on, not just on the driving side, but on the engineering side. And that's where we've seen that development. As I've said several times, like if I was Red Bull, I'd be jumping on Albon, straight away. He's, I know they kicked him to the curb, they kicked him too quick, and he's a better driver than he was then. And I thought he actually performed pretty well. He had some bad luck when he was in a Red Bull, mostly due to Lewis Hamilton running into him half the time. Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah, exactly. I also, I think he takes the weight of the world on his shoulders though sometimes, which is what I think happens on track. He tries to do too much. He tries to. We always say, the really good drivers somehow show themselves, even if they're in a bad car. They do something special. Mm-hmm. Alex out there trying to do something special every lap, and there comes a time when that's not really gonna. You can't just keep doing that, right? You got to get the car behind you too. It's got to come up together. So I think that's why, the ups and downs happen, and we see some special moments in a race, not necessarily a complete race, but we do see it. And it's a lot of pressure, right? But he bought into it. I'd love to see him in a better car, but if he's not in a better car, then hopefully he can be a part of bringing the Williams brand back into a lot more success, because he's certainly capable behind the wheel.
Yeah, for sure. Logan Sargeant, P20, 0 points. As much as I like Logan, this is going to be his last season in F1, I think, if not before, as the team have said that they may be forced to make changes over the summer break. So it's unfortunate. I don't really have a lot of notes on Logan. I think he's had moments. He finished P11 in British Grand Prix, which is great. Right. All of that, no matter what he does now in between there's any change, all of that is a day late and a dollar short, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, even if he's just started smoking Alex in the next 3 or 4 races, I don't know that anything is going to change here. I think the team is probably. I don't know.
I think if he was going to smoke Alex, I think it would change. But not expecting anything like that, right? Yeah.
No, I'm not.
No,
but...
I mean he's a nice guy. Yeah. He's a decent driver, but he's just not there, and it's glaring when you compare him to Alex Albon, right? And the team, I think. The way Val's is, he kind of committed to Logan for another year, hoping, there'll be something else coming out, and I just don't think it happened. And Williams don't have time to sit for a year and let some other potential points go by the wayside. Because in this Formula One that we have right now, every single point is so crucial, and it can be the difference. You get a better driver in there, and Alex and someone else is scoring points, it can clamber them up to 7th or 8th in the points, and that changes the team's trajectory for the next couple of years, maybe even. So it's super important. And I just don't think Logan flourished, and it's not easy, And
agreed. So. Yep. Let's see. Alpine is next. Alpine Renault. They've got 9 points in the championship. They currently set P8 in the championship. From the team perspective, Alpine had some better performance of late, except for the British Grand Prix. It was a bit of an anomaly. I was head scratching on that one. And I was actually getting somewhat hopeful that they had maybe shaved some weight off that car, found some setup and upgrades that were starting to deliver some competitive performance, maybe letting them fight for that, 8th to 10th place position midfield. Started to feel like that in the not British Grand Prix, but the 2 previous, and I felt like maybe we're making progress. I mean, I still hope that that's the case, but the British Grand Prix has me a bit worried about that. This is a legacy manufacturer, as you and I have talked about. And until recently, when they sold a portion of the team, it was a Renault 100%. So they should be heading toward the front in fighting, for podiums by this time anyway. And 10th isn't where they want to be. And I think, that's where they've ended up the last several seasons. Yeah. So this is even before Alpine name change when they were Renault. So they've brought in Flavio Briatore, and the last time he was involved with the team, they won championships. Whether they deliberately crashed or not, but they won championships.
Yeah, they had a couple.
This is before the crash,
with
right?
them at that point.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I also think maybe in the back of my mind, I think maybe fans were hoping for that whole Wrexham turnaround thing with Ryan Reynolds buying into the team, and maybe they'd have some fun content and that kind of thing. None of that's really happened.
No.
So maybe fans are a little disappointed on that front. I am an Esteban fan, but I think the team needed to make this choice, and I think they chose right with Pierre Gasly. But what do you think about the team?
Yeah, I'd say the most disappointing team on the grid. And I think over the past few years, we're always like, when?
Yep.
When? They have a surge, and when? I mean, the last time I really remember them being competitive, I think, was when Kubica was driving. So, I mean, was he driving? Yes. Yeah. I mean, they got the money, they got the resources. They're just keep tripping over themselves. Yeah. And to come out with a car that's overweight and with a dud engine it's inexcusable, really.
It's brutal.
As you say, that drivers aren't the problem; the team is the problem. And I just don't know where it's going with them. They're a little lost, and it's been impressive to see them clamber up. But I think Silverstone, with its fast corners, a heavy car, that's going to compound itself over those fast corners, right? So maybe that was a reset of expectations. How do they turn it around? I don't know. I think the Flavio thing is a sign of desperation. Flavio is not an engineer. He he's a deal maker maybe in the background, and if that's what it takes, is he out there, pedaling to bring in the proper people? Maybe, but that also isn't going to turn this team's fortunes around overnight either by bringing in other people. So maybe in the future, but it's always maybe, and it's always in the future with this team. So it's hard to get behind them. I know warned Ryan Reynolds. I said don't do it, but he went and did it.
Yeah. I don't know if the whole Flavio, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze there, but anything you could get out of him that might help, that might be good. But I don't know. They got to turn that around. Let's talk about the drivers. Pierre Gasly is P50 in the championship. He's got 6 points. Pierre is doing what he can. And to be honest, neither driver in this is the team's, isn't the problem in this team.
Right.
So as long as they don't crash into each other, then they become the problem. The team,
maybe they are. Yeah, their talent isn't the problem. Maybe their relationship is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like, ooh, yeah. So the team need a fast driver who can develop the car, and they have that in Pierre. So it's good that he's staying despite the lack of results. And to be honest with you, they're a little surprised that he's bought into that. Stayed there. He could have been angling for Perez's seat. He could have been angling for an Aston run, Mercedes run, anything.
Right.
So I'm a little surprised he stayed there. Good on him. He's a Frenchman at a French team. That's great. They need to reward that by seriously solving their issues. So they've got Pierre. He can help develop a car. And I think you and I both rate Pierre. He's an incredibly fast driver.
Absolutely.
When he's on it. So that's good. I think he's done a good job. I just don't think he has the car to do it.
Yeah, I think, when you're talking about, I think he didn't think he had a lot of options. Obviously, a lot of options opened up after he committed back to Alpine, right?
Yep.
The Red Bull one, I'm not sure, if they're going to pick a Red Bull driver with an old Red Bull driver, would they pick Albon or would they pick Gasly? I think they'd probably pick Albon, but I really do still rate Gasly tremendously when he's when they give him a car, he can get the job done. He's a great racer, etc.
He is.
And yeah, he's the top point scorer on the team. I think the relationship between the two drivers, the good side of it lasted maybe a couple of weeks. That is a sore spot, and as you say, someone had to go, literally. But it's impressive that Pierre's been there 1 year and basically kicked Ocon out. So I think within the team they appreciate what Gasly can do as much as us looking from the outside in appreciate what he does. Yeah,
I agree. I think he's doing a really good job to that team. The team know it, and the other thing, Paul, is he's not trying to get something out of that car that it won't do and throw it in the wall. He's not making a lot of stupid over-trying mistakes, unforced errors. He knows the limitations. He's driving to them, and where they score points, they score points. That's the way it is. But I think he's a smart driver in that sense.
Yep.
Teammate Esteban Ocon, he's P18 in the championship. He's got 3 points. I do rate Esteban, and I think he's a good driver, but he is an aggressive driver. And I just feel that he hasn't really found his team yet, like Alex Albon has, or maybe Pierre. I feel like he just, I appreciate that drivers are measured against their teammate and all that, but when he's banging wheels with Fernando and banging wheels with Sergio and banging wheels. I just, at some point, that's an element of racecraft that needs to be fixed. You've got to execute without ham-fisted moves on your teammate. You're not showing that you're the better driver when you're banging wheels with your teammate. You can try to justify it was his fault. It doesn't work, Could Haas be a better solution for him? Could Sauber, could RB be a better fit? I'm not sure, but I hope he does find a spot on the grid next year, because I do rate him. He's a very fast driver.
He is a fast driver. I think his team may be more closer to Charlotte than a Chateau, his driving style. Because, every driver has a character. Every person on the planet has a certain demeanor and some certain things spark them off. And I think Ocon just has this little chip on his shoulder, a little edge that he just can't see through sometimes and see the bigger picture of what those actions will do. I'm all for someone.
I think Max struggled with that too, right?
Yeah. I'm all for someone stating their claim on the piece of tarmac and not being a wet nurse to everyone is one of your favorite sayings. But I just think he's just a bit troublesome. And I just don't know what team really wants to do that, knowing, that when he's young, you're like, oh yeah, he's got that little fire in him. It's good, Then once he gets more mature, but hasn't really gone away with Ocon.
No, it hasn't.
There's certainly a place for him in motorsport, and he is a very fast driver. But I think that's just one little piece of a Formula One top driver puzzle that he doesn't have. It wasn't that long ago. He was in line for the Mercedes seat, right? And there's no talk of that anymore.
It's almost, Paul, like every race he's like driving for his career. He's afraid if Pierre beat him, he's going to lose his seat. And maybe that comports because he's had a very humble upcoming through motorsport and very humble family, very limited resources. And so he's had to fight for everything he's had.
Right.
And maybe that is hard to break, that when you're there, if Pierre beats you in this race, it doesn't mean you're losing your seat. The team will appreciate that you checked up because you avoided the accident with Pierre. You can discuss who was more ham-fisted on the move, but crashing their cars to make your point so you aren't seen as being beaten, I don't know.
Yeah,
he just
can't
work.
Yeah, he's just not willing to give that up, right? As he's shown many times, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Haas, Ferrari F1, they sit on 27 points. They currently are P7 in the championship. I wasn't popular, but while the world was absolutely enamored with Guenther Steiner and buying his book, and you just, Netflix Drive Survive, and it was all things.
Yeah, I think you called for his head about 2 years ago, actually. Yeah.
I did call for his head 2 years ago. And, people were like, what are you talking about? Guenther's
He's so
awesome.
funny.
I wasn't buying it. Yeah, I wasn't buying it. And the change has seen a boost of performance. And while you could say that that was the car that was being designed while Guenther was still there last year,
yeah,
fair enough. But I tend to think Komatsu and the team have flourished with this change in energy, change in attitude, change in leadership style, and that's why you change the coach and not the entire team.
Yeah.
No offense to Guenther. I would love to have a beer with Guenther. I'm sure we'd have a marvelous time. But when things are going south and you're all, walking around going,
oh no, it all went wrong.
You've got to figure something out, And I think maybe I'm reading too much into this. Wouldn't be the first time. But even the team members seem to have a little more pep in their step. They seem a little more, animated. The pit crew, Nico, Kevin come in for a quick change. They quick change. There's some hustle. I just feel like the team's vibe has changed this year under Komatsu, whereas Guenther may be a good Formula One guy, but I don't know if he's a good leader of people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah, I think the change in dynamic in the team is you don't have a manager, you have an engineering process or direction more than just someone saying swear words on a TV show. My worst nightmare ever would be to have Guenther and David Valsecchi having a motorsports discussion and me not being able to get away. I mean, just
that would be.
I would have to shoot myself in the head. He was a personality, fine. You like him, fine. But I think that there's a distraction for the team, and I think the team needed a technical direction. They were struggling. They couldn't make the tires last more than 3 laps. They needed technical focus.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's what the change is, and that's absolutely I'm really proud of what these people did, and they turned the car around, and they can make their tires last. They're fighting out with Ferraris and Astons and everything, and I think it's really impressive.
It's awesome
what they've done with. We know it's not like they threw a big budget at it. We know that Gene keeps the reins tight. So they've had to do it with efficiency as well.
Agreed. That's really the bigger issue now, is that Gene needs to start putting money into this team if he wants to be a serious player. Or if he doesn't, that's okay, Gene, but then sell it to Andretti or somebody who will. Because running around in 10th or 11th on life support, that's not a big motivator for employees, for drivers, or for anyone.
Yeah.
James has come in. He's set a massive trajectory. He's not saying he's going to win the championship next year, but they've got a plan and they've got a goal and a mission. I'm sure you do too, Gene. You're a smart guy. You forgot more about motorsport than I'll know, but you've got to start putting money in this team and let them get in a top solid, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th performer. And this year, Paul, is a good example because you had a driver capable of delivering that kind of performance in Nico Hulkenberg, right?
Yeah. He's done a great
So
job.
let's talk about Nico. Now that I say that, Nico's currently P11 in the championship. He's on 22 points. The team has 27. So guess who scored the lion's share of the points? Nico is showing why Audi wanted him and why Paul Charsley says he should have been a contender for Sergio's seat or Mercedes or RB or Alpine or Williams or Ferrari or for anyone. I think he should have been a contender. Nico is the real thing. And while I admit that the Renault days had a few too many unforced errors from Nico, he put it in the wall when he was running a podium or something like that. I get it, but I think he's progressed a lot since then in a sports car where he won Le Mans and all that. I think he's progressed. He deserves a top ride. He absolutely does. I think he's done a yeoman's job of it this year, Paul. And I've always been a Nico Hulkenberg fan, even back in the Renault days, and felt like he was sort of my modern version of Nick Heidfeld.
Absolutely,
a damn good driver who needs a damn good car because he can win races in it.
He could win races. He absolutely could, and he's done. I think right now, he's been up and down. He's like he was out of Formula One, he's back in.
Yes.
He seems like he's been around forever. And he's one of the elder statesmen on the grid for sure. But he's still got that drive and the skill. And I think what he's helped with the Haas thing is the technical side, the backup of all his experience, plus still being able to have the goods behind the wheel and the pedals, right? So. I think he doesn't have a lot of time left in Formula One. That's why it's kind of like, man, right. I would love to see him go into the Red Bull car and get on those podiums and stuff, because he's going to help Audi a lot more than Audi are actually going to help him in the end, right? Because that's still going to be a work in progress by the time he's probably, has to exit Formula One. So. Absolutely done a great job for them, and they should be more than happy about keeping him on for this year, because he's made a massive difference in the success of this team.
For sure. And Kevin, I like Kevin too. He's P16. He's on 5 points. I get the impression this could be Kevin's last year if they make any change, but it may not. If the team are losing Nico and they want the experience and consistency and not having to bring on Ollie Behrman and some other rookie, they tried that, the whole rookie things, and that ended in tears and a hell of a lot of dollar signs, right? So maybe having a solid veteran like Kevin for Ollie there might be good for the team. So I don't know, maybe Kevin stays because he knows the team, he knows the process. He's obviously good car development. He's not lighting it up like Nico is, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what they're bringing Ollie in to do, and hopefully Kevin. I don't know. Do you think they'll keep him or not?
I don't know. I would hope so. I think I like Kevin. I like Kevin as a driver. I got to see him race over here in the prototypes, and he's a no nonsense guy. I like that. He grabs a car by the scruff of the neck and hangs it out there. He's not shy about anything to do with velocity. Sometimes that may count against him sometimes, maybe not as finesse a driver as Hulkenberg can do. But he's definitely got a lot of talent, and I do like his style in his drive, and obviously he's caused a lot of problems with some of the other drivers because he'll fight for every position, even if it's supposed to be a slam dunk. He's not one just to kind of wave you hello in DRS zone. He's going to fight you down to the apex every time, and I do like that about him, and so I wouldn't want to see him go, but I think if he does go, wherever he's going he's gonna light it up too. So. Yeah,
whoever gets him is going to benefit, I think.
Sure. Whether he goes to IndyCar or he goes to sports cars, whatever. Yeah.
Next up, RB Honda, 31 points on the championship. They're currently sitting in P6. RB has me a bit confused with their new team boss, Laurent Mekies, who's in charge, and Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki. Red Bull money, and yet they're behind Haas. That's a little concerning come mid-season. The team said that they don't want to be a junior team for Red Bull, but a serious player on the grid, and their presence is causing a lot of heartburn with Zach and Toto and other people because Red Bull gets two teams on the grid, no one else does, and yada yada yada. But they're not making hay with it so far this year.
Right.
It's not clear to me that they have big Red Bull money, though. And as their upgrades haven't been as successful as they would have hoped, in fact, they're almost de-evolving a little now. If the car isn't the bigger issue, which I think it is, then both drivers are. So they need to double down on the upgrades in the second half of this season and need to start scoring some serious points, because I just don't understand now what the team is doing going backwards.
Yeah.
It's just not a good look.
Yeah, no, it's not a good look. And I wonder if it's a knock-on effect from the turmoil at Red Bull, quite honestly.
That's what I'm wondering.
It's like, I don't know how the budgets work between the two and how much budget they get, but if budget may be replaced by technological information, right? They get pieces off the shelf from the Red Bull car, etc. But I just think Red Bull, the organization, is in a bit of a quandary right now, and it's kind of like, youngest kid is, he's a little bit of trouble, but he stays quiet most of the time. I'm just gonna we'll figure that out later. We got a lot of problems with the teenagers right now. And I feel like it could be something like that. There's not like a dynamic driver team in there either. There's a lot of chopping and changing with people running around in Formula One, and they may be one of the ones that are kind of getting skipped over. But because Red Bull need help, and they're going to be sucking as much of any technological, personnel and information as possible to help that team, and this team kind of get the second people. And if they do somehow find a gem in there, then where they're going very quickly, right? They're moving up to the big team. So
then for the drivers, you got Daniel Ricciardo. He currently is in P13, the championship, at 11 points. Dan is a bit of an enigma. We've talked about that even the mid-season now. I've argued that, and this is just my hunch, I've argued, and I'm saying this with all deference to Dan, that he's never really got on top of these hybrid cars. With the brake-by-wire, the drive-by-wire, the degradation, the MGUH, the MGUK. He's not been on song since end of 2013, folks. He just hasn't. He went to Renault, didn't really perform, went to McLaren. That was probably not that great. He had the one win, but not that great. Now he's over at Haas. And I thought when he left Renault and joined McLaren, I thought when he left Red Bull and Renault, I wasn't quite sure about that choice. But then when he decided to go McLaren, I thought, well, that could be a better choice, in hindsight. But I was sure that he would come into RB and just dominate and take over this team as the team lead. And yet here we are, and Yuki's beating him, right?
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I honestly feel like his brand, the Daniel Ricciardo brand, if you will, could use a change to something like WEC where the pressure is off and he can be all the Daniel Ricciardo he wants to be, the jokes, the laugh, the smiling, all of that. He can really up his brand and be part of a team in WEC and live it up as a race car driver without all this pressure and doubt and negativity,
Yeah, it's tough for a guy like him. He had a lot of success. He was the next best thing. He was the Oscar Piastri of a decade ago, right?
Yeah,
future world champion, all this kind of stuff. And it's hard for him to give up on that dream. But, who's Daniel Ricciardo's favorite driver in the world?
Dale Earnhardt.
Right. Yeah. Not a lot of hybrid systems on, he's that kind of driver, right? Give me rear wheel drive with a big power and start flinging that thing around. And so maybe the technology is above what his skill set is, right?
Or maybe he just doesn't like it.
Yeah, but there's a lot. I mean, I've learned going into this the hypercar stuff. I've started learning certain things that you have to do as a driver driving the car, and that's for me got no fundamental basis for a carter or a Formula Ford driver. They're learning computer systems and how they work, and where you can't drive like this, even though that's ideally what you'd want to do, because the system is going to react in this way, and you can't do that to get the best out of the hybrid system. There's a lot of stuff going on with this technology that is completely separate from basic driving skills and instincts. And but maybe that's what Daniel's missing. But he would do well in a better situation, in a different situation than maybe the Formula One circle completely. I feel
like he would.
Yeah.
I do. Yuki Tsunoda P12. He's on 20 points. Yuki is doing much better, I think. But I think in my mind, it's just a veneer.
Mm-hmm.
The team have taught him to sort of put on.
Yes.
Well, deep down, I think he's still the same F-bombing Yuki he's always been.
Agreed. Yep.
Yuki just came into this series, and I raised an eyebrow because his rookie year, he hit the ground with just this whole entitlement attitude,
Yeah.
Like he's entitled to this ride, and he was on F-bombing his teammates and his engineers, and I was like, good grief, what other rookie do I recall coming in and telling the team that they're a bunch of effing idiots, and,
right.
and you know what I mean? I don't know anybody that does that.
Yeah.
You should be grateful to have the ride. So then a lot of people say, well, that's because Honda made them take him, and so he does feel entitled. I don't know if any of that's true, but I don't recall seeing Lando, Max, Charles, George, or others who I rate much higher, honestly, coming in and telling the team to F off. I don't, and I think that's still there. I think he's a happier, friendlier Yuki on the outside, but I still think that's there. Having said that, I think Yuki's the guy scoring the points, and he's doing much better. And I think this is a better year for him. I can't argue with that. The performance is on track. I'm curious, though, if Honda moves to Aston and rumors possibly Haas, then maybe there is another place for him should RB make a change. Maybe Honda will take him and, tell Aston, well, we're going to be your engine supplier, and Yuki's coming with it. And if you replace Fernando with Yuki so you can keep Lance.
All right, so I'm going to throw something else out here. So we talked about Alpine, and we said the drivers aren't the problem, the car's the problem. I think the opposite is here. I don't think the car's as bad as it was.
Good point. That's a good point.
Because we're measuring we're measuring Yuki against Daniel Ricciardo. Are we measuring against Daniel Ricciardo now or Daniel Ricciardo 8 years ago? And saying, Yuki's doing a great job. He's doing a great job compared to Daniel, but maybe Daniel really isn't doing that good a job. And maybe this car's potential is not being sought out by this group of two drivers. As all you said about Yuki is, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think it's a facade.
Yeah.
He went to a lot of sensitivity training, and it worked out for a couple of races. But then one little bad thing happens, and the F-bombs start flying again. Right? I don't appreciate Yuki's demeanor or how he treats his team, and I think it's a sham also. So I really think this is. It's hard to say they're the worst driver pairing on the grid, but I really think the drivers are a weak point, and I think you put someone good in this car, and this team can actually rise a bit further in the standings.
I agree. Had you put, Pierre there, Alex Albon there, Esteban there, Nico Hulkenberg there, put somebody in there.
Liam Lawson, for crying out loud,
Liam Lawson, for heaven's
he jumped
sake.
in the car. Yeah, he jumped in the car with no experience in the middle of a race, race weekend, and he outshined them all. And so, and I don't know, I still don't know what level Liam is at, but it appears to me that he's at a level higher than these two guys.
I agree.
Already.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. Aston Martin, Aramco Mercedes, 68 points. They're currently P5 in the championship. From a team perspective, it's hard not to face the simple fact that the team have taken a step backwards from last year, and there isn't a single person at the team who thought that would be the case, I think. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a single person at that team that's okay with it. The issue is, so far this season, it's down to their development work, their dev work. and that hasn't paid big dividends compared to the likes of McLaren, Mercedes, or Red Bull. So this leaves them struggling for that 6th to 10th position right now. It's mid-season, and I'm not sure if they're going to switch focus at this point on the 2025 car, or if they'll still heavily develop for the second half of this season. I'd be very curious to see what they do. Would they view that as putting good money before bad? I don't know, but they just poached a Ferrari chassis guru, and perhaps that means they may not have lured Adrian Newey. I don't know, or at least not yet. So my hunch is that they will see some upgrades for the remainder of the season, but the focus could change really to that 2025 season. That's my guess. I don't know. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think there's some growing pains here. They put a lot of money. They've got a whole new facility.
Yep.
And they found this little magic button somehow last year where the car was just shining, and it gradually kind of dwindled a little bit there. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on. I think they'll probably find a solution, and maybe they're looking for a solution in some new hires, etc. Maybe some people with some fresh eyes.
Yeah.
I think as a team, when you look at who is above them, and the next team above them is Mercedes, that's not a reasonable goal at this point. Beating Mercedes to 4th in the championship. And when you look at who's behind them, my favorite driver pairing in the RB, right? They're probably, if they were smart, they probably wouldn't be spending all their change on trying to do anything this year. It's always hard to.
I agree.
But I mean, they can't go to sleep because they still need to keep scoring points. They still need to keep padding that gap between the midfield group.
Them and RB.
But I think for them to be able to turn that around and stop beating Mercedes, I think it's unreasonable right now. So I think they need to really start focus on the future rather than, how many points can they beat RB by, or how many points do they lose to Mercedes by, for instance?
Yeah, they're at 68 points. Mercedes 221. That's just it's not going to happen. Let's talk about the drivers. Fernando Alonso in P9 on 45 points. There's nothing you can say that would convince me that Lance's recent performances means he is now faster than Fernando. I'm sorry. Nothing you're going to be able to say to convince me that. At this point, Fernando is depriving a top team of a world champion. And I think this season so far seems to suggest he might be getting frustrated. You got to really read in the margins of Fernando's comments. But he puts it out there, and he's not feeling it right now. And now we've seen this before from him. And when the sheen wears off of a team for Fernando, a change sometimes happens, He's not enjoying it, and not sure if that will happen here, as he probably likes the money. But even if he was on song this year, Lance still has a lot to deliver as far as points. So it'll be interesting to see where the team goes from here, and if Alonso stays until 2026 with Honda Power. My hunch is he won't.
Yeah.
But I'd be elated to eat crow on that. But I don't know, Paul. I'm probably reading too much in. I just get the impression he's getting a little frustrated.
Yeah, it's hard to say with Fernando because he's always motivated to, we've seen him in cars that weren't great, but he was willing to push for a 15th to a 14th place. But it does get a little old. And I think what happened last year was it gave him so much hope.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, if that hadn't happened, maybe more consistent. But it was like, there's so much hope, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to, and it just didn't pan out. So maybe he's motivated. I think he can suck it up, take a break, come back. But if the car's not quite there, and if he knows the car's not really going to develop that much because of what we just talked about, why would you, put resources into a car that's kind of just going to stay where it is in the championship? It's hard to motivate every weekend. But if the car comes alive at one race or here, then I think we're going to definitely see the old Alonso. And what happens in the future, who knows? I just don't know. He obviously probably needs to see something tangible to stick around.
I would think.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. For Lance, he's P10, 23 points on the season. For Lance, I think he's doing better, and especially the last couple of races. He finished ahead of Alonso. I think he's doing well. They re-signed him. I'm just not quite sure. I just don't really have a lot in my notes about Lance because he's kind of that kind of guy. He just he didn't really say a lot, Yeah. I don't know exactly how he feels all about it. The Lance thing, I just don't understand the Lance thing. I love to watch him drive in changeable conditions. I think he does well. I think he's done well this season. Is he enough driver for where the team currently is performance-wise? Maybe he's fine for that. If they were challenging for wins, maybe you'd look to a different driver. But at this point, continuing to beat his teammate is what he should do.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, we can't put everything into the last few races, I don't think. I think he's actually done better in comparison to Alonso than he did when the actual car was actually better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I agree. Alonso was on the podiums. Lance was a bit further back. Now he's maybe equalized it a little bit, and and maybe it's something to do with what Alonso's not doing, but versus maybe Lance sees a little bit of hope to perform against his teammate, and that spurs him on a little bit. We don't get a lot of feedback of Lance and what he thinks and how he thinks he's in an interesting position, being the son of the guy that owns the team, which doesn't happen very often on Formula One, right? It could affect you. I'm not sure it does affect him, but it could. He has his bright spots, and in his whole career, even when he was younger coming in, he showed up. He nearly won a race. He's got poles and everything like that. So we're just not sure which Lance shows up every week.
Yeah, right.
Really,
right.
And
hard to know.
But recently he's been showing up more.
Agreed.
And maybe it's because there's less pressure. I don't know. Hard to say.
Yeah, maybe. Now it brings us to Mercedes. AMG Petronas, 221 points, currently P4 in the championship. From the team perspective, Mercedes deserves, in my opinion, all the praise they've gotten at the end of the first half of 2024. They have worked their tails off getting their heads around this car, despite having key personnel poached over the last few seasons from this team. All of that gray matter's gone. They always say, well, we've got, we're a deep bullpen. Yeah, but you can only go so deep. And retain that same kind of wisdom and knowledge. Lewis announcing he's leaving the team. They've had a lot of other things going on, and still, not to mention, they ditched the zero pod car and headed in a completely different direction. That's a massive blow and challenge, but the team have rose to that challenge, and you have to respect their trajectory, which at this point could overhaul Ferrari in the championship. I just think, and I'm a Ferrari fan, guys, so I cannot ignore what this team has achieved this year. I think it's a quasi similar to the McLaren story in the last 12 months, and I just think it's terrific.
Yeah, no, it is good. It's funny to believe, what a breath of fresh air. There's two Mercedes on the front row. You didn't think we'd say that very often, would you, right?
I know. After 8 years of getting pummeled.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but it is, and it's great because they've really added to the championship this year, adding another team that can win races. I mean, as I say, it's pretty spicy right now, and it is quite a turnaround. It's interesting that they were the king of the bouncers too when the new rules came out, right? And they really were put on their back foot by that change in the rules, and have literally up until the last two races have been chasing it again, and they finally got it back to a winning car. It seems like there literally was a magic bullet for this team. They changed the front wing. They finally solved literally an equation, and all of a sudden the car comes alive. Just shows you they were so close but so far, and they definitely have the drivers to back it up, and it surged them to the front, which is, in these days of Formula One, it's kind of a miracle every time. But we keep still talking about this. McLaren had a miracle. How do you do this? Then they did. Then Aston had a miracle. They were on fighting for podiums. So this is it's not what you expect with a sport that is just built on so much data and technological progress that people can actually jump ahead of teams in such a quick manner. But they did it. Yeah,
they did. Let's see, the drivers, Lewis Hamilton, P8 at 110 points. And, the team purposely keeping Lewis down. George has 111 points to Lewis's 110. And George's P7, Lewis's P8. Anyway, Lewis needed the British Grand Prix win, in my opinion. It was great to see, as well as a good way to end his career with the Mercedes. It was a great, ribbon on the package. Having said that, I wouldn't count him out for other possible wins this year. If Mercedes continue executing here, he clearly has the chops as a 7-time champion, and this recent win may motivate him. Lewis thrives on success like that, so certainly wouldn't count him out for other wins. If he wanted to just take it easy for to end his career with the Mercedes, I couldn't blame him. But last week showed us that's not what he's doing. He's very motivated. He can still be wickedly fast and win races. So let's hope he keeps that motivation for the balance of 2024 and makes a race of it with George. I don't see why he wouldn't.
Who's probably happiest about that win is Ferrari.
Yes.
Because they know they have...
He still has it.
He still has it, and he does still have it. And, the emotion of winning that Grand Prix was real, right? It was an emotion of relief, I'm sure. And I have said, Lewis doesn't doubt himself too much, but he's still a human being. And you still... You can believe yourself all you like, but if you never get that result on a piece of paper, it hurts. And he did it in the typical Lewis fashion at the British Grand Prix. All his adoring fans from decades at this point standing there in front of him, cheering him on. I mean, what could have been better than that for him and the team, as an individual and the team as well, to be able to celebrate in front of, we know that all these teams that are British-based bring a lot of people that never see the cars race except for this race, and all the hard work and all the downside that the Mercedes had. Lewis Hamilton once again comes through and does it for him.
Yeah, that's great. George, like I said, 111 points, P7. George is doing a great job, too, as well as this year with his win in Austria. And, he was gifted that, but what a great result. Much needed win for him. I do get the impression this year that he knows he's the new number one and has taken on that role very seriously and quite well, to be honest with you. But I also think there's a slight different dynamic with him and the team and strategists that I'm not sure I'm used to seeing with Lewis. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it seems like there's this relationship was one of junior driver and Lewis, and now that's turned sort of lead driver, but Lewis is kind of there, and he seems to be more demanding or expecting from the team.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I think the team were more demanding and expecting of him. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it. It's not a very good description of what I'm trying to explain to you, but there's just this interesting dynamic between George and his comments to the team and how they respond versus Lewis and how they respond. And, I think they're purposely trying to keep George down. No, I'm not. I think, I don't know if you get that feeling. It's just different. Even when George kind of comes in and tries to put his feet on the desk, it's always calm down, son, sort of thing. Junior driver kind of, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, but I think it's changed recently because I think the realization that Lewis is leaving changed his mindset to trying to prove himself against Lewis. And now he's transitioning because he doesn't have to worry about proving himself against Lewis anymore.
Yeah.
Now he's then transitioning to trying to figure out how to be a team leader rather than a team antagonist and trying to get there. Well, now you're there.
Yeah.
Here it is, boy. Right on a plate.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Right.
And because he is going to have to lead that team. We don't know who his teammates going to be, how experienced they're going to be, or what demeanor they're going to have, how they're going to get along. So he needs to really set that stage before the next driver comes in the door. Yep. So he's got a lot of work to do, quite honestly. He's doing it because he's winning races. He's being competitive. And the fine line between being demanding with a positive aspect to the team rather than be, like the Yuki Tsunodas, right? So you can't be the whiny, banging your foot on the desk. Why did you guys screw up? You've got to be rally the team around, but also try and push them up a level with yourself and say, hey, I'm pushing this myself here. Why don't you come along for the ride too? Let's go. But he's still a young guy, and that's not. He's going to find his way, but it's not an automatic.
Yep. McLaren, Mercedes, 295 points, P3 in the championship. McLaren have been such a good success story over the past 12 months. It was like, I don't know, it was this time last year that saw them start their journey towards the front end of the grid. Last year, at this time, they'd have been elated to be in the points, but that changed from being happy to be in points. Then they were hunting podiums, and now they're hunting wins. And that is all happened in 12 months. That's pretty incredible by F1 standards, folks. And can they keep this progress and development coming? That's the big question for the second half. I think so, but their Achilles heel right now would seemingly be their strategy and a few errors that they've made. And to operate at the level of a championship winning team, you can't have any of those.
Yeah.
As Mercedes and Red Bull would tell you. I think they will solve them, though, and I think they can take the fight to Red Bull in the second half of the season, and I'm fully expect them to. You, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it is miraculous. I know you said, I don't know if what Mercedes did is the same level. I don't think it is because they came literally from the back of the grid. They tore.
Yes.
They had to literally tear the house down and build a new house and hope this one worked. But they had the confidence. I think they had the knowledge and the confidence that they knew what they did wrong and they knew how to fix it. And they put all the eggs in the new basket and it turned out great, know. Very impressive how they did it. It was literally on a tightrope for disaster if they didn't get it right the second time. And because they literally threw away half a season just to scramble back. But ever since then, they've just built and built and built, and they've built a great infrastructure in the technical side, in the leadership side, and also, as we're obviously going to speak out about, in the driver lineup.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. You got Lando Norris, P2, 171 points. It's hard to find much wrong with Lando and his approach now. He's acting like a driver hunting a title, and that singular focus that you see in him now is definitely something you see in Max, Lewis, Sebastian, even Rosberg when he won the title that year. It is a laser focus. There's no nonsense with Lando anymore. He's not putting up with it. He is here to win, and that switched, right? That's off. I like Lando 2.0, and I think there is still room for a little more sanding of the sharp corners on the racecraft. But he knows what grit sandpaper is needed, and he knows where he needs to sand it. He is a very smart driver. Lando, I think, is going to take the fight to Max and Red Bull in the balance of 2024. He'll learn even more, I think, at this point about how to race them and where he and the team need to perfect their strategy, their racecraft, their performance. In short, I think the balance of this year or 2024 in aggregate, I think he's becoming a serious champion in the making this year.
Yeah, becoming is the key word there. And I think
it's the hard part, isn't it?
I think they're both working together on that, McLaren and Lando. I mean, I think sometimes McLaren lay too much on Lando's plate for decision making in the races.
Part of the strategy issues.
Yeah, but I think what will happen in the end is that it's actually going to make Lando a more complete driver. He's going to make him like a Lewis Hamilton, where you can see the forest for the trees and how the race is going and what should happen at a certain point in time. And he's definitely showing signs that he's well aware of that stuff. He's got experience, but he doesn't have as much experience as some others and so you can't replace that. He still needs to go through those cycles. Right. But I think there's been some mistakes made because they put it on him, but I really do think it's actually going to make him better in the end.
Yeah,
and there's no doubt he's a massive talent. I mean, for him to be able to fight with Max like he is, no one's been able to do that, right? And
he's awesome. He's the guy to take the fight to Max, no doubt about it. Oscar Piastri, P5, 124 points. Oscar is doing a terrific job, and if you ask me if he's driving like a second-year driver, I would say no way. Mm-hmm. He looks as good as some of the veterans out there on this grid, if I'm honest. And, I mean, that's a fact. I think also he means business. He's a no-nonsense guy. I like that about him. And he is a serious champion, possibly in the making. It's only his second year. He seems to still be struggling a little bit with the tires. But we saw that with Charles Leclerc when he got there. It takes everybody some time to get on top of the tires and deg rates and wear rates and all that and get them in the window. That's not easy to do. So I don't hold any of that against him. He's had a couple of unforced errors, but not crazy moves that have, been silly. But I think there's been moves that maybe weren't the best judgment at the time, but that's just racecraft development. But he's not ripping front wings off and crashing cars every other race, like other rookies are or second years are. He's a seriously good and fast driver, and this may make, in my mind, so far mid-season in 2024, this, in my mind, may be the best driver pairing on the grid.
Yeah, I would agree. Obviously, there was a lot of turmoil with Oscar ending up at McLaren. A lot of turmoil, but I think it has a lot to do with what Oscar thinks he's going to achieve and knowing what he needs to do to have the tools to achieve what he thinks he's kind of got a right to. I really think he thinks, well, I'm going to be world champion. Who's going to take me there? And we'll start here, and this is where I want to end up. And I know you said, he hasn't got his head around the tires that much, but I think in the last couple of races, I actually think he's
been better.
Yeah, he's been better at that, and I think he's really coming on strong, and it makes Lando be a better driver, but Piastri is hunting him down. He's chopping at his ankles. I'm a big fan of Piastri. I really am. I mean, I would say, I love Alonso, but for me, Piastri is one of my favorite drivers on the grid. I like what he's doing. I like how he does it. And I think he's got tenacity and drive and vision. And I think he's going to get there.
Yeah, I do too. And kudos to Mark Webber for terrific management of this young man. I mean, Mark's done a great job with him. Let's see. Ferrari, 302 points, P2 in the championship. Ferrari started out well, but they I don't know what happened. They've fallen from the sharp end of the grid. Yeah. I know. That's here. I've got that. Where is it? I promise I have that.
Hey, what happened?
There it is.
Exactly.
So Yeah, they've fallen from the sharp edge. Suggests that they haven't kept up with the development war. I think is really the only thing the conclusion I'm drawing from this. And I'm not quite sure I understand why their development hasn't delivered the performance, unless there's intrinsic characteristics of the chassis, and they're limited on really how many aero points they think you're going to gain out of any particular one upgrade, right?
Mm-hmm.
They hit the ground seemingly very good on their tires, which was a real departure from what they were last year when they were struggling with the tires. They were cooking the rear tires off that car, and that seemed to be solved at the beginning of the year. I don't know if that's still the situation with the new upgrades. They won Monaco, but looked quite a bit adrift at Silverstone. So I'm not sure what the remedy is other than tire management and just sheer pace is what they need. I think their strategy, everybody was poking fun of Ferrari, rightfully so, for their strategy. I think their strategy this year has been better. I think they've called a better race this year. That was a major talking point last year. I think they've done better. I'm not even sure I can pinpoint a cool or warm weather advantage that they might have at this point.
Yeah.
Perhaps it all comes down to their single lap pace is putting them down in the field, and even their long run pace, while decent, may be slightly off with the upgrades, but they're starting back in the field, and that always leaves you adrift, and DRS trains and all that. It leaves a big hole to dig out of. I don't know. What do you think? Where do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, I think pinpoint is the key word here. I don't think they can pinpoint exactly what's not quite right. It's just not quite right, and their expectations don't live up to them. What the performance they got, and I think it is made worse by the performance of the McLaren and the Mercedes team hopping in. Without them surging forward, then Ferrari would be, hey, we're on the podium every week. But those teams have upped their game, and Ferrari have missed a step somewhere, somehow. And getting rid of Carlos isn't necessarily, having Lewis Hamilton there, that's going to change things a lot. But Ferrari they've got some fundamental issues with the car that they need to sort out. Because I think Charles L. Carlos can show up and fight with the best of them on a given day if Ferrari give them the car. They just don't have it right now. And so they've definitely got to start searching for the clues to the answers to fix it.
Yeah, let's talk about them. You got Charles in P3, 150 points. Charles looked on point at the beginning of the season, but now he's really struggling in qualifying, making unforced errors again. That would suggest that he's trying to make something happen. Maybe making, something, working too hard, trying too hard to make something happen in a car that isn't as interested in winning as he is. That could be true, but if it doesn't seem to be impacting Carlos, though, quite the same way, Carlos doesn't seem to be having the unforced errors. Maybe he's driving within the car's limit, and Charles is just simply trying to force something to happen. Not quite sure what's going on there. I think Charles needs to kind of reset for the second half of the season, settle, and try to extrapolate as much as he can for points gains and start working his way up from there instead of trying to win a race in a car that could just as easily put him into the wall as over the finish line. So I think for Charles, I don't know, Paul. I'm a huge Charles fan, but the unforced errors continuing has me concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the pressure.
It's a pressure, and that's what I'm chalking it up to. I hope I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I think it's the pressure. He definitely has, probably got Ferrari tattoos everywhere. He's the guy. He's the Ferrari guy, right? I mean, they're going to keep Charles as long as they can and he wouldn't even look elsewhere. He wants to be a Ferrari driver. He wants to bring them a championship. He wants to bring them race wins. But I think Ferrari kind of scupper him too sometimes in their strategy course. And don't try and win a race by chance or by trying to be tricky. That makes Charles look bad, makes the team look bad. That's ultimately what they
agree.
tried to do at Silverstone. As you say, reset, get what you can out of the car, and then, hey, let's build, then start building a better car. But let's not try and,
Right.
luck our way into a race, or it's luck or no luck, and you're at the back, right? You're out of it, and that's going to be a desperate
try to
situation
consolidate
for a
your
driver.
position, right?
Yeah, I mean, accept where you are, and then, hey, let's just make it a better car now, and let's work on that rather than the here and now. But that's tough to do when you're at Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
Harder than any other team to drive for. They want success now, always.
Yes. Yeah. Carlos Sainz P4, 146 points. Carlos started the year on good form. And I don't know, maybe I chalked some of that up to auditioning for his next large salary and his next team. Fair enough. But then he started struggling like Charles did. But seems to be driving within the car's limits a little better maybe than Charles at this point. At least that's my guess. Also at this point, if I'm honest, I respect that Carlos is still trying to get the maximum from his, race seat, knowing that he's been fired. That's I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't blame him if he took his eye off the ball here and spent most of his time focusing on the contract offers that he's got for next season. Oh, sorry, my head was somewhere else. You know what I mean? They fired him. He is not walking away. And if you're going to fire me, then I have to go over here and work out my next great deal. But he doesn't strike me. He's there.
Right. I mean, what did he do so wrong to be fired? He just wasn't your Lewis Hamilton,
He wasn't Lewis Hamilton.
He wasn't Lewis Hamilton, and he didn't have the, if Lewis wasn't moving, I don't think they'd be questioning the fact that Carlos should be replaced. Right. But Lewis comes with a lot of history, a lot of experience, and a lot of other things that Ferrari can make use of. But that aside, I think Carlos is doing a good job. I think he's doing the best job he can. And doing it well in the position he's in, knowing he's, as you say, he's been fired.
Good.
Tough for him right now, though, because he seems to be playing a game on musical chairs, and he could end up not come out so great. He may end up with
the music could stop.
It could stop to a degree. I mean, he's going to end up somewhere, but it may not be ultimately where he wants to end up. And I think he was a little desperate. Then he saw all these other opportunities open up, and so he's holding back. But no teams like being puppets for a driver that doesn't even drive for him yet, right? So difficult game to play. He's obviously looking for his best opportunity. We'll see where it ends up.
Yep, agreed. And then finally, Red Bull, 373 points, P1 in the championship. Red Bull started the year on song, and it looked like it might be a bit closer to the competition, but, on balance, another winning year for the team.
Mm-hmm.
That's all changed. And I don't think we can ignore the intra-team drama with Christian Horner, Jos Verstappen, Adrian Newey, and others. The incident seemed to suck the fire out of the team to me, with the corporate Red Bull at odds with the racing team Red Bull and Horner. Everything getting very tense, cloudy, and unsure of itself. We often say that F1 is about the rise and fall of teams, and I would argue that Christian is now heading a team that may be coming back down from their peak last year. And whether his actions, true or not, were a catalyst or not, I don't know. But there is something amiss with the team and their development parts and making big gains. With Adrian, kind of drifting around, those kind of things. You could argue that these stable regulations, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just the stable regulations. We're not going to see big gains again. We're going to find incremental gains, small. Those stable regulations usually see the field close up, and maybe that's where we are. Maybe I'm being too harsh with the drama and all that. Red Bull just suffered 8 years of domination by Mercedes, and I bet they're wondering, well, wait a minute. where's our
8
where's
years?
our other 3 years? Or we've only 3 championships. Where's our other 5 years of domination? Those regulations are stable. So it's tough. But is this season going to be similar to 2009, Paul, where they score a boatload of points in the beginning of the year and then spend the balance of the year trying to nurse that all the way to home, trying to eke out a championship like Jenson Button and Braun did? I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to say. It's funny. Yeah, I think the turmoil is very relevant to what's going on. It's funny. I'm in this other, not the Park Fermé fantasy league, but I'm in another fantasy league, and then the team name is Jos and Christian's 3 easy steps for destroying a dynasty team, right? So I mean, they've sped it up quite a bit. I think this whole turmoil. I think there is always a compression with the rules stability. People figure out what Red Bull are doing eventually, and they find other ways to go quick and things equalize and get closer. But I think they've definitely sped up that by everything that's going on in there, and it's got to be a distraction, and people's communication break down because, well, I'm not speaking to him. Well, you tell him that he did this. Well, you tell her that, right? And it goes from the inside out. But that being said, Red Bull are very smart people. They've got great engineers. They've got a great basis for a championship-winning team, and they do things very well still. And they have a fantastic driver on their team who makes up for some of maybe their failings at this point. But there's just only so long he can keep doing that.
Yeah, I agree. This whole thing has turned into, I don't know if Christian is like Brad Pitt, Achilles, and this is Troy. I don't know what's going on here.
Don't get me started with Brad Pitt, for crying out loud.
Yeah. So let's talk about Max Verstappen. P1, 255 points. I'm not sure how Max keeps his composure with his dad constantly at war with his boss and pulling at the threads. But that, in my mind, Paul, needs to stop. If Jos cared about his son, he'd back off and let Max concentrate on the rest of the 24 season and a fourth title. Showing up and throwing about a bunch of crap out into the press about Christian and all that. You're not doing Max any favors at all.
No.
Max doesn't need that. He goes into Thursday press conference, and now they're going to be asking questions about his dad's mouthing off about Chris. Whatever Joss's beef with Christian is, dude, you need to set home, okay? Yeah. Because Christian isn't Max's dad. He's his boss, and Max is trying to use this team as a catapult to a fourth world championship. So, son, sit down. You had your chance in Formula One. Puttering around in old legacy cars and getting mad because Christian allegedly didn't want you. Go home. Your son is trying to win a championship, for God's sakes. Yeah. So that's my first big beef on this whole thing. Max is still sublime. Even with all of this, I think we all do a disservice by underestimating just how smart he is and how exceptional his racecraft is. Yep. I mean, many were more than happy to start lobbing quotes like, oh, this is Max 1.0 after Austria. But that was completely not true. He is a tough racer. Everyone knows that. He always will be that. And he's not one to be trifled with, but that's why he wins, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not because he's dumb or stupid. This guy knows what is going on the track. And I think Max needs to put the rest of the white noise behind him, out of his mind, focus on getting as much as he can from his car because he has no help from a teammate, and just clinch this fourth title, and then he can figure out what he wants to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, go home, Jos. Your son is way better than you ever were. You cannot help him anymore. Yep. All you're doing is hurting him.
Nope.
But it's a tough relationship between those two. I mean,
it is.
Jos wasn't
fun
dad.
They had it tough.
Yeah, Jos wasn't fun dad. Jos was, I'm going to turn my son into and he got him.
Yeah,
a long way, but a lot of other people helped Max as well, and Max also had a lot of talent unto himself that Jos could never bestow upon him. And he is smart, and he knows what he's doing. And we already went over the Austria thing, and it's completely blown out of proportion. Everyone wanted to jump on his case. But as I said, we already had that discussion. But
yeah, we did.
I think it's great that we have Max Verstappen. I think he's a fantastic driver, and he does amazing things. And he brings that car into places and in positions and finishes and wins races and championships that maybe it shouldn't be doing, as we can see by his teammate.
I agree.
Do not underestimate how good this guy is, and whether you like or don't like his personality, it's what makes him function and keeps him strong, keeps his head strong and not distracted, by a lot of things which would be so easy to do right now. I mean, look how strong he is, and he's still performing out there with all this other stuff going on.
Yeah, I agree. And, I saw somebody the other day, Max just wins, he's in the best car. Oh, we're going to do that again. We're going to do that. And for 8 years with Mercedes, you were denying that Lewis didn't have the best car in the grid. It dominated the grid. That happens. And I would argue this year, Max is not in the best car.
No, I don't think I don't think the car is the best. It's one of the best. And on a given day, it will be the best, but it's certainly not a dominating car at this point.
Yeah, it's not. Sergio Perez, P6, 118 points. Sergio Perez seemed to start out okay this season, but has really taken a nosedive mid-season. I'm not sure if the car development left him behind or what is exactly happening. I don't know why the team were so quick to re-sign him, given the talent on the grid. Someone said that Max demanded that he stay because Max liked having Sergio sort of trundle around behind him and be I guess maybe a test bed for his race strategy. And fair enough. But what would be odd is if the team was really focused on the team, that wouldn't have mattered. So I go back to that intra-team thing, Paul. This is wild guess. I have nothing to back this up. But could Christian have acquiesced to the demand if Max truly demanded that Sergio stays, if it was actually, because of what was going on within the team and he was desperate to keep it all together and to keep Max happy? And so given everything is crumbling, Christian is, got all this stuff, and I'm sure his marriage didn't, is not taking it well either, and all this other stuff. If all of this is true, I'm assuming, but all of this is crumbling, and so in order to keep Max happy, Max wants Sergio. We got to keep Max, and you got Max's dad, basically, shooting sniper rounds at you, and so could that have prompted keeping Sergio? What I do know is that the team is usually all about the team, regardless of what Max wants or not. To me, maybe the politics played a role in here. I don't know. But I'm here wondering if Sergio will even see out the rest of 2024. I don't know. I like Sergio a lot. I feel like that maybe he'd be better at Alpine, Haas, Williams, or another team. Maybe Red Bull is too much pressure. Maybe if he resigned, even if he resigned himself as a number 2, it's still not showing, and he's bleeding too many points in the team to justify the commitment to Sergio. So there's a lot of this that doesn't make sense to me because from a team's perspective, it's all about the team and maximizing points in the team.
Yeah.
Regardless of who Max wants, you've got to have somebody that is slightly there, right?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with everything you said, actually. I think the turmoil did lead to probably Christian trying to appease Max, but I also think he didn't have the capacity to keep looking out elsewhere and make maybe a better, more logical, harder decision. If everything else was calm, he would be able to sit down and really think about the Sergio situation. Is Sergio still there? Does he still have talent? Does he still do it?
to that point, Paul, you might say, well, that's where he relies on helmet marker. Well, helmet was at odds with Christian during.
Yeah, they're not talking to each other, right? The whole system
Right.
is broken down, so the decision-making process is obviously going to be compromised, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think that on the Red Bull side, on the Sergio side, I think the beatdown does happen. I think, you go into your racing career wanting to be a world champion, you find out you're just not good enough.
Yeah, right.
That's not easy.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
not
And
easy.
it's like, oh, well, we'll just finish second and be happy with that. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I came here to be second. And Sergio
Right.
had some moments where, he, obviously he's won races, but I mean, even in his younger career, he showed signs as, hey, this guy's really something. And he was something.
Yeah.
And maybe he is something, but the environment that's been built and is fermenting a Red Bull is just not pretty. And it's
not working.
I think it's playing on him. He's kind of like the second-class citizen on the team at this point. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of life left in Sergio as a racing driver.
I do too.
Even in Formula One, perhaps. Maybe at
I do
Audi
too.
or something like that. But it's
Right.
just not in this environment, which is pretty toxic at this point.
Yeah, I think at this point it is. I think
Yeah.
you're right.
So I don't blame
All
it
right.
all on
Well,
Sergio.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I agree. All right. Well, that does it. That's what we think about the season so far and the teams and drivers. It's a mega mid-season review. Sorry for
Yeah,
the
it
long
is.
podcast, but we had a lot to cover. All teams, all drivers. So apologies for that. Paul, thanks for jumping in this week and helping us out with the podcast for
Yeah,
this
it's fun.
week. Really appreciate it. Yeah, but let us know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the post of this podcast or on social media. Let us know what you guys think of the teams and where they stand. Would love to see your opinions on it as well. And then, since this is technically Tuesday's podcast, we'll be back the following week with a race review. The Hungarian Grand Prix, Paul.
Oh, yes.
Monaco with walls. Exciting. Yeah, so we'll be back for that one. All right. Until that time, next week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.